people, we have to fight. Egungu, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Dandara, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Makandalo, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Nana John, Henry Clark, you see us.
We have to fight. Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Yansatewa, you see us. We have to fight.
Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Marcus Garvey, you see us. We have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Nana Zumbio, you see us. We have to fight.
Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Nana Hannibal, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Ancestors, you see us. We have to fight. Let's go fight.
We have to have the courage to construct our own reality. And that's what Garvey was talking about. Because he said he looked around, he didn't see what he thought should be there. And so what did he do? He didn't get depressed about it. He didn't get defeated about it. He said, I'm going to build the government that we need to have. Ooh. Where do you get that kind of boldness from? So we got to go all the way back to Garvey, who said he would come again. He said, he would be here with us, no matter how long it took. And I'm telling you that the way he comes back is in our work. Not honoring him in words, pomp, and all of that stuff, but honoring him through doing what he did. How many of us have the courage to do that? The man took on the world for us and in our name. And then we come to Sodai. And in this presentation of the paradigm, I'm going to make this like what it is we want to reach. So Sodai is translated clear word in Dogana language. And I use it to mean that here we gain understanding. This is sight with understanding. And it is seeing beyond what just we think we see with this physical thing. It's seeing beyond that. And so we gain vision, because that's what vision is. With vision, you've got to be able to use the imagination. The imagination informed by the African spirit. And Brother Amos, who I work very closely with, was a good friend of mine. He taught me, and he would talk about imagination. Image a nation. Do you see? But that's got to be part of vision. To be a visionary, you got to see beyond this box here. You got to see beyond the ma'afa. You got to see what is it that our people rightfully should have, and that's what Garvey did. Garvey had a vision.
Tendai Mwadi, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Modzimo Mokoro. We give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tomi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. And we are still in honor and celebration of the cycle of the sun, as it is most dominantly celebrated within the societies in which we live, brothers and sisters. And so we repeat our New Year's greeting as taught to us by our people in IET, our sisters and brothers in IET, who don't say Happy New Year, but say Bon Komba. Fight well, fight good. May your fight be well, brothers and sisters. And we encourage one and all to enter this year referred to as 2026 with the African fighting spirit. And if we was in any doubt about the fact that we need the African fighting spirit in this moment, at this time, in this hour, the forces that be, as far as global Western imperialism, global Bakra imperialism are concerned, have definitely given us all the warnings and signs that we require to understand and know that the fight is on. And in order to be successful, in order to prosper, in some cases, in order to even survive, we need to fight well. Bon Komba, Bon Komba, Bon Komba, brothers and sisters. We thank you for being here with us on Kimbunga Media at this hour for our first live stream for this calendar year. We know that we have not been live for a month or two, so we thank you for sticking with us. Trust that we have not been idle and that enough things are going in the background to make this platform, to make this institution what it should be to serve you as it best can. We want to encourage you to like up the video as you come through. Like up the video, yes indeed, and share the link far and wide. Let the people them know say Shakara is live right here now with a conversation in which we will be discussing recent events in Venezuela, recent events in Nigeria, recent events in Somaliland, recent events throughout the Caribbean region, brothers and sisters. Yes indeed, because some of the things say Venezuela is just Venezuela, you know. Some of don't know say Venezuela, the bombing of Venezuela was the culmination of months of increased militarization, brothers and sisters, of Southcom, which is the U.S. military high command that claims jurisdiction over the Caribbean region. And as a result of that, all kinds of political, economic, and military machinations have been taking place throughout the Caribbean that have us cowering to the United States of America, and in some cases, beefing with each other, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed. We have to explore these things. We have to explore these things as a people. And within our global African community, there are few more erudite, more well-informed, more convicted, more studied sisters and brothers than our special guest this evening. And so, please, brothers and sisters, share the link far and wide. Share the link far and wide. I met the people them know that Shakara is live with Brother Kwame Piankhi right about now, exploring all of the above and more. Without further ado, let me bring forward my special guest for this evening's proceedings. Greetings and welcome, Brother Kwame Piankhi.
Thank you for the great introduction, Brother Shakara. Thank you for the great introduction. I guess Happy Gregorian New Year. We know the real New Year starts in August, but Happy Gregorian New Year.
Indeed, my brother. Thank you very much for being with us and answering the call. It's necessary, my brother. I'm reminded of a word from our ancestor, Baba Kwame Ture, who encourages us that we must always be engaged in the political education of our people.
Yes.
Because our enemies are always politicizing us. And so this is our humble effort to do just that, my brother. And so we thank you for aiding us and assisting us in this endeavor right now. I want to get started, immediately. And we're going to start in Venezuela. For those who are tuned in, we're going to start in Venezuela and the Caribbean and implications therein. Then we'll deal with Nigeria. And then we'll talk about Somaliland and Israel's recognition of Somaliland and what that really means. What political games are at play with that recognition right there. So let's start with Venezuela, my brother. A lot has happened in the last week. And we'll start from the beginning in terms of your assessment of what the forces at play were in the bombing of Venezuela and the kidnapping of Maduro and his wife. Just give our viewers an initial breakdown from your perspective.
Yes, the forces at play. There's a couple things. The U.S., the waning influence of the petrodollar, the U.S.'s AI disaster. So they're looking for a way to power their AI, even though the Chinese DeepSeek open AI, early last year, and but they need these huge data centers to be operating, which are huge energy sinks. And then number two, the U.S. is resource poor now in terms of all the things they need: lithium, rare earths, things of that nature. Processed rare earths are controlled by China. Lithium, much of it is in Africa and
Congo,
in the Congo, and a lot of those contracts are going to China. There's lithium deposits in Ghana, and I'm not so sure about the Sahel states, I don't want to be quoted wrong in there, but I think they have good. They may have lithium deposits there as well, right? So, and then there is also the financial. As you know, there's been a lot of buying of people hoarding silver and precious metals and things of that nature for the past several years, and JP Morgan cannot honor their contracts, and Venezuela has a bunch of untapped silver and I believe untapped gold reserves. So that's what they're looking to gain now. This whole military strike, I believe, was a way to try to intimidate the populace to overthrow their government so the U.S. can take over the country without having a big invasion force. Venezuela is 3 times the size of Vietnam. If they were to truly invade Venezuela with boots on the ground, it would make Vietnam looked like a fight between two 5-year-olds in kindergarten. So the U.S. cannot absorb the casualties. The U.S. Army does not have the personnel. Even if they have the personnel, too many of the personnel are obese, right? And so so this is a way to try to intimidate the Venezuelans to overthrow their government. We'll see if it works. I think, and this is speculation, but I think the U.S. may have had some inside help in terms of the invasion. I know there were rumors earlier in the week that the head of intelligence was arrested and that was retracted. And I do know that that for some reason the radar system lacked 50% of the spare parts to necessarily defend the country. And to me, that's unacceptable. There should be reviews on a quarterly basis.
Concerned. Well, that's an interesting. So, my brother, okay, there's a few questions there. Let me just address the first one that is borne out by your last statement. You're suggesting that Venezuela is capable of putting up a more significant fight than Vietnam was, and we know that Vietnam was a significant embarrassment for the United States of America.
Yes.
But from what you're suggesting there is some basic military. We know that nobody has a bigger military than the US, but it seems that if their radar is not sufficient, what gives you the impression that they would be able to put up a significant enough fight against the biggest and mightiest military?
Well, let me clarify. If the U.S. were to put ground troops into Venezuela,
okay.
So let me clarify that. The U.S. society could not withstand that sort of war.
Right.
Because I think during Vietnam, did they have 500,000 or 1 million troops in Vietnam? They sustained the losses of 50,000 troops and how many hundreds of thousands that were injured. And really, you could say the U.S. still hasn't recovered from Vietnam. Here it is, 50 something years later. And I was a small child, towards the end of the Vietnam War, but you saw the results of it. You saw the drug use, a lot of the heroin addicts were Vietnam soldiers. Even I had an uncle who didn't directly serve in Vietnam, but he was in the Air Force, but he did a couple missions in there, and you saw the drug abuse happen as a result of the PTSD that is acquired in those theaters. So I don't think the current United States of America, where the people are more mentally fragile, could withstand that sort of ground invasion. And I think it would topple the country. So they need to do something like this on the cheap.
Right. And so hence air bombing and so on, I guess is a part of the consideration here.
Yeah, it's kind of the shock and awe strategy, and a mini shock and awe strategy for Venezuela. Okay. And then there's other interesting things about this in terms of the lack of defense in Venezuela. One, they invaded during the full moon. Who does that? And you and I understanding of our ancestors' history, particularly during the Ma'afa in the slave trade. Our ancestors may have organized their slave revolts during a full moon in terms of positioning themselves, but no attack was ever given under the light of a full moon. So you attack under a full moon, nobody shoots back at the helicopters. These are Chinook helicopters, which are very loud, right? So you don't need sophisticated air defense systems to bring these things down if you identify them, basically. So there's a lot of strange things about what happened last weekend. Yeah.
All right. And the second thing is that you've mentioned a number of resources there, and haven't focused exclusively on oil, which has been the major talking point, not only from the mouth of Trump, the president of the United States himself, but that has been the major talking point because obviously we're talking about Venezuela, and it is said to have the largest known oil reserves on the planet as it currently stands. But as I understand it, that oil is very thick and very difficult to process. And so even if America had sights on the oil, which is reasonable to say that they do, it would be a while before they were able to really reap the benefits of that. What is your assessment of the oil situation?
Yeah, well, the CEO of Exxon said as much yesterday when Trump invited all those oil execs to the meeting. He said it was basically a waste of time. It's 10, I think that take them 16 to 20 years to develop the oil fields. Yeah, Venezuela has heavy oil. There's some sort of chemical additive they have to add to the oil before processing to every barrel of oil, so it makes it more expensive to process. Venezuela has been denied a lot of parts because of the sanctions the U.S. has had against them since the Chavez regime. So their oil processing facilities are and the refineries are underutilized as a result, right? But that is still not to let the government off the hook, because even with their relationships with China and Russia, they should have developed some sort of homegrown parts industry and finished goods industry so they can have their own parts, so their parts are not underutilized. And you could contrast Venezuela with the Sahel countries, who are already building up their manufacturing capacity in the short time that in the short time that the military leaders have taken over in the past 2 to 3 years. I'm not going to call them a junta, right? We're going to leave that word alone. That's a European pejorative. Is that the correct word for them? But I think there's a lot of things that the Venezuelan government, knowing that they were in the sights of the U.S. government and also the EU, that they could have done to secure themselves and make themselves a more robust and resilient economy, and they haven't done that either.
Okay, we'll come back to that issue. I want to ask you one more question on the oil before we move on. And a few days ago, the New York Times and other news outlets were reporting that a number of oil companies are in the process of suing the Venezuelan government for loss of earnings, profit. I don't know. Now I haven't actually detailed. I don't know. I'm not sure if you have which oil companies are. I know that Exxon claims that the Venezuelan government owes their money, but I'm not sure if they're a part of the suing.
If I remember correctly, it's Chevron. I think Chevron is one of them. I believe.
Which is the other major oil giant as far as America is concerned. ExxonMobil and Chevron.
It's Venezuela's natural resources.
Right.
So you would have to sue them in American court or international court. But if Venezuela is not shipping the oil to Western Europe or to the United States, and they do have several gas stations, or at least they used to in the United States under the Citgo brand. But I think one of Trump's benefactors, and I'm trying to remember his name now, I can't remember his name, owns the Citgo brand now, and so yeah, could it work in U.S. courts if they have access to the oil? Yeah, it's possible. But if Venezuela is shipping their oil to China and Russia, then it doesn't, or in other spots east, then it really doesn't matter. But I do have to point out, China only gets 2% of their oil from Venezuela.
Yeah, because that has been an overblown narrative as well, that he has to go in to protect the oil, and it's amazing how they find easy legitimacy in these arguments. But he has to protect American interest by ensuring that China doesn't get to the oil, and Russia. And when you actually check it, neither nation imports a significant amount of oil, apparently from Venezuela.
Yeah, and so this is pure speculation on my part. But you look at the decline in U.S. Treasuries, and in terms of their interest rates are going up, and China's been dumping the treasuries, and other countries have, and been buying precious metals instead. If you look at the decline in the power of the dollar, where fewer nations are using the dollar in transactions, is the U.S. possibly trying to claim the Venezuelan oil as an asset in order to reduce the interest rates, whether that asset's been developed or not? But are they trying to claim it as collateral so they can reduce their interest rates on their government debt, right? And to me, that's what makes the most sense, because those oil fields cannot be developed to the extent that the Trump administration wants them over until 10, 16, 20 years. So, and again, you're going to need boots on the ground to do that. or and it's so I don't. To me, the only logical point is that they need to use that as collateral for their own loans.
Okay. And so and we're gonna move through some of these topics relatively quickly, brothers and sisters, because we've got a few things to get through. But obviously, we'll come back again and delve into them in greater detail. But the another issue now is the act of the kidnapping itself, which they are couching in the context of law enforcement, because they are charging Maduro with being an international criminal, and they have created a term that I don't remember hearing very much, if at all, up until now, which is narco-terrorists. So traffic drugs. This is now an act of terrorism. Yes, and Trump has openly accused Maduro of deliberately letting people out of prison and mental institutions in Venezuela and sending them to America with the purpose, with the mission, with the express mission of killing Americans. Yeah, this is one of his accusations. But it appears, my brother, that the cartel through which they said that Maduro and his wife were conducting all of these this narco terrorism, the judge in the trial has already declared that there's no evidence of the existence of this thing. So that
exactly. So the case is falling apart already, right? And you look at Trump's hypocrisy. He just pardoned what was it, an ex-Bolivian president who was known for drug trafficking. He pardoned a whole bunch of other domestic drug traffickers in the United States. And let's not get back into the CIA's history of drug dealing in Latin America. You know, there's associations with the various cartels in Colombia and also in Vietnam as well, and Afghanistan. Remember, when the Bush administration invaded Afghanistan, they got rid of the opium eradication program in Afghanistan. Right. So we have to look at that history. So this is not about drugs. This is totally, to me, about resources and assets in an American empire whose big tech plans are to me, falling apart. Because you look at, again, at OpenAI, when DeepSeek made that program for about 1/100th of the cost of OpenAI, OpenAI's CFO is now looking for a bailout from the federal government long before they have issued their IPO. Right. So these guys are in big time trouble now. You know, all the tech bros. And a lot of those tech bros have South African roots. From Elon Musk to David Sachs, and even both his son is one of these tech bros as well. And so I think part of it too is they're looking at this as the white man's reconquest of the world. And there have been conferences, and I know one that was here where I lived, where basically one of the CEOs said, you know, their problem is that they lack the means to enforce Western values on the rest of the world. And that is not hearsay. That is absolutely not hearsay. Somebody I know attended that conference, and they told me that, right? So and that conference was put on by Palantir, who is again the company that's a big Trump supporter. You have the CEO Alex Karp.
Palantir, sorry, my brother. The one of the executives at Palantir was also recently inducted into the U.S. military, along with executives from Facebook and I think OpenAI as well. So they're a part of, I forget what the name of this institution within the military is called, but it's concerning the internet and security, online security and online warfare, basically, you know. So yeah, all these companies are now part of the American military, for brothers and sisters who are not aware. But my brother,
and those companies were actually created by the American military as well. For all intents and purposes. So
just to clarify, brothers and sisters, the charges against Maduro are 1, narco-terrorism, 2, conspiracy to import cocaine, which is ridiculous if you understand that. Well, first of all, is doubly ridiculous because the first charge I remember from months ago was fentanyl. They were saying that Venezuela was responsible for the fentanyl, and this seems to have changed magically to cocaine, and we're not hearing about fentanyl again. But despite the fact that it is well known that Venezuela is a minuscule part of the cocaine trade as far as source nations are concerned. So that's what they're charging Maduro with. So those two charges are related: narco-terrorism and conspiracy to import cocaine. And then weirdly, they're charging him with possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. Now, my brother, I'm highlighting this because these four charges appear to be ridiculous. One, as we've already suggested, the charge in relation to the trafficking, well, at least it has been thrown out because of the non-existence of the cartel in question.
Yes.
But the other two are doubly ridiculous because this man is a president of a nation and therefore presumably is the head of the armed forces, and that would require some engagement with some gun, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, you have the sovereign right to defend yourself.
Right. So that would appear to be entirely legitimate. And what right would another nation have to decide whether the president of another nation is allowed to carry weapons or not? So it's too ridiculous for this to have been a serious attempt at a court case, my brother. Is the point I'm suggesting? Yeah. So what do you make of the charade that is taking place, pantomime, and what the purpose of the pantomime is?
I'm just as befuddled as you are, and that's why I brought up the whole: does the U.S. want to claim the assets as collateral? Because the case seems like to be a sham. The Exxon exec basically threw the Trump administration under the bus yesterday, saying the meeting was a waste of time, and I'm just paraphrasing, right? So to me, the whole thing is an absolute head scratcher. Now, the other thing I can speculate is, again, is this an intimidation tactic for the rest of the world? But I think what is happening is it's going to put the rest of the world, particularly our progressive African countries, on guard even more, and it's going to drive them further into Russian hands for military equipment because they see what's happening. And I also think those same African countries are not going to make the same mistakes as Venezuela, and they're going to build up a manufacturing industry in those countries, so they're not dependent on outside parts when anything goes down. Yes. So this whole thing is absolutely going to backfire. But again, I want to take a step back as boorish as the Trump administration is in terms of a lot of these wars that they're picking on throughout the world. A lot of these moves that they're making were written by think tanks that are affiliated with both parties. And just to take you back to the campaign last year, I mean, Kamala Harris was mocking Trump as a coward for not going after Iran, right? And then what does Trump do? He attempts to bomb Iran with Israeli help. The Bush, Obama administrations tried to install leadership in Venezuela, a few times, basically. I remember once Chavez was arrested temporarily in a temporary coup, and their main guy was this guy named Juan Guaido, who was both parties were friendly with. Yes. And so again, to me, just from my little layman's look at things, this seems like a desperate, dying empire that's flailing at everything. And they're looking there. I mean, look, one second it's Iran, next second it's Nigeria, the next second it's Greenland. Now they're threatening to bomb Mexico. They're doing all sorts of stuff that it just the ridiculousness of everything that you're seeing. It seems very schizophrenic. It's almost like somebody thrashing about. It's like a dying person thrashing about in their hospital bed. And this is what it seems like to me, because there's no logical sense to this.
Right, and what you're saying makes sense, and I don't want your last words, true though they may be, to lull our people into a false sense of security. No, you don't ramp around a dying beast, right? You know what I'm saying?
No, not at all.
Dying beast is very dangerous. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And so within that context, my brother, let's look at this. By the way, we'll get into the Caribbean now, but I want to address that first within the context of the racial dynamics of Venezuela, because as you know, coming from a black nationalist pan-Africanist perspective, a race first caveat perspective,
Yes,
people tend to question the relevance of matters such as these to us as African people. First of all, I do want to state that that Venezuela, Africans do exist in Venezuela, brothers and sisters.
yes, they have a large African population. I don't know if it's quite the majority, but it's pretty close. I would think
Right.
30, 40 plus percent, right? You have a lot of mixed race between the indigenous or mestizos and the Africans there in Venezuela as well. So I mean, it has a huge African population,
Right.
And I want to say next door in Colombia has the third largest African population in the Western Hemisphere.
And there's been a lot of talk of Colombia in these conversations as well. Yeah. So I want to talk about that now in terms of the Caribbean region. And so my family hail from Jamaica and Antigua. Jamaica has been very quiet on these issues, but we've heard a lot from Antigua. Partly because the US had put travel restrictions and other restrictions on Antigua, and the fact that let's back up a little bit.
All right.
First and foremost, a few months ago, it was announced that the US government were trying to curry favor with certain nations to allow the US to place military bases in some Caribbean countries, and a lot of the nations apparently said no. Yeah,
except for Trinidad.
Except for Trinidad, and that's a whole, because the president of Trinidad at the moment is on some, and
then you have to deal with the racial dynamics in Trinidad. You have the Indian population versus the African population, and the disdain the Indian population has for the African population there in Trinidad as well.
Right. So there's all of those dynamics. But then what we're seeing is in relation to this, because she has come out so openly as a puppet of, like, more than usual, like most Caribbean governments, are puppets of the US government. But she has basically said this more openly than I can remember any Caribbean leader just openly declaring themselves as a vassal of the United States of America. But what's happened is that now Antigua is agreeing to take refugees from wherever America wants them to take refugees from. But at the same time, there's talk of boycotting products from Trinidad because of Trinidad. It's a mad thing, my brother. Can you just speak to us about how all of this is affecting the Caribbean and what are the implications for our people in the Caribbean?
Well, the Caribbean is full of nothing but weak vassal leaders who have sold out to big corporate interests, either domestic corporate interests or American, British, Israeli, or Japanese or EU corporate interests. So it's very easy to, get them to dance to whatever tune you sing. And a lot of this Caribbean misleadership is compromised through various things, criminal activity, things of that nature. So it's very easy, as I said, to get them to dance. And I don't want to take this conversation too far off rails, but at the independence of the early 1960s, I always say a place like Jamaica was born in sin, because Jamaica destroyed the whole vision of a West Indies federation. And because you don't have a federation, because you don't have that unity where you can build up a manufacturing base and a consumer base and build a navy to protect that base, those should have been the first thing that should have been done in 1960 at the purported independence of these Caribbean nations. They should have developed a big time maritime navy, right? Well, that's kind of redundant when I said maritime navy, but they should have developed a navy. And so now you have a bunch of puppet leaders throughout the whole Caribbean. That's why you hear the silence from Jamaica, because Jamaica dances to whatever tune the United States tells them to dance to.
Yeah, and Britain increasingly as Andrew Holness is a member of the Privy Council, and
Yes.
and so on. But
And that's why I put
so
independence in quotes, because, you know, maybe with the exception of Trinidad, I mean, and maybe recently with the exception of Barbados, all these Caribbean countries are still effectively, the land is owned by the British monarchy, the English speaking Caribbean countries, should I say. And
yes, yes,
so that's why you have the silence. And then you have an educated, the elite in these countries. I mean, you know, how African centered is the education in the Caribbean? Not very, in terms of what's offered to the mainstream. There, you know, you'd have to have parents who are really on it to educate their children in an African centered and nation building manner in these countries. But again, you know, these elites align themselves wherever their second homes are, which are primarily Miami. So they
right.
want to they want to go home to Miami. So
Oh yeah.
that's why they curry favor with the United States. So,
But my brother, and by the way, so I listened quite intently to Mia Motley's Prime Minister Mia Motley's statement on these matters. And it was a nothing statement, much like the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, to the extent that you can tell that she, even if she wanted to, she has made the decision not to say anything. Yes. And like of consequence. And it appears to me to be a thoroughly deficient reality that the United States of America can so blatantly threaten the sovereignty of a nation that is in the vicinity of the region, that can implement economic policies that are designed to affect the viability of the nation states of the Caribbean, and collectively they cannot form even a mildly critical voice, apart from platitudes to international law, right? You know, and these kinds of things. And I'm highlighting Mia Motley because she has been the one that has developed a reputation for being more progressive.
Undeserved, right. Should I say? Yeah.
Speak to that.
Because who put her in power?
Right.
You know, the major hotel chain in the Caribbean put her in power, right? You know, the prime minister previous to her wanted to keep the national health care plan there in Barbados, and she was willing to scuttle that plan. So she was put in by neoliberal forces. That whole thing of making Barbados a republic is just window dressing more than anything else. Right. She's very much a neoliberal. And so I guess what the term is she's controlled opposition. So she has no intent of having a liberated, self-sustaining Caribbean. She's perfectly happy with the powers that be to the north,
and seems to on occasions such as these speak more to United Nations strength than the Caribbean region strength, if that makes sense. She seems to, as opposed to attempting to rally the governments of the Caribbean to respond to this, it's more an allusion to the United Nations. And one could argue that that's because supposedly the United Nations is a more powerful body. But it seems to me to be the case that if we can't rally the region, you know, so I don't. What do you make of this allusion to United Nations principality? Like, what's that about?
Yeah, the United Nations is a Bretton Woods institution, right? Those are the institutions that were formed at the close of World War II, primarily by the United States. You have the United Nations, you have the IMF, you have the World Bank. And I can't, you know, I'm trying to name the other organizations, possibly the WTO and the ICC and things of that nature, which are controlled by the United States, right? And the European powers. So the Caribbean and African countries have very little say-so in these institutions. So she's appealing to the same institutions that have the Caribbean under their thumb. Yes, the Chinese and Russians have a seat on the Security Council, and they can veto things in the Security Council. But if you look at the Security Council as a whole, it's probably, most of the Security Council is aligned with the West. When they invite a nation on for a temporary seat on the Security Council, they're usually controlled by Western countries. So so again, the general populace thinks the United Nations is something egalitarian. They shouldn't, after all these years, after the whole WMD fiasco back in the early 2000s. But I think there's a lot who think that the UN is some egalitarian organization that can come in and save people, and it hasn't. And so, she preys on the ignorance of the populace.
And I think I really I shouldn't say began, but a significant amount of my increase in being critical of Mia Mottley. And I don't say this to be ignorant, because I'm fully aware of the challenges of being the head of government in a nation, in a Caribbean nation. It's a very precarious position, and so I try not to engage in undue or unfair criticism without understanding. Even though if I was in a position, I would do things differently. But for me, the heads of government of the Caribbean, how they responded a couple years ago to America's attempts to put a security support mission in Haiti, told me almost everything I needed to know.
Yep.
And the fact that Prime Minister Mia Mottley sat at that table and sanctioned that operation, it to me, it was a very serious sign of a very compromised political actor, in my humble estimation, because it might be more obscure. America's machinations in other parts of the Caribbean might be more obscure. There should be no question in relation to Haiti. It's very obvious the destruction that America has wrought in Haiti. And so to sanction that mission and sit down with the Secretary of State of the United States government in implementing a program to get rid of so-called gangs in Haiti, and I'm referring to Anthony Blinken, who was the Secretary of State under Joe Biden, I think is very problematic. And so if she was not able to stand on principle at that moment, I didn't expect anything from her, unfortunately, at this moment either.
And the irony is that those Caribbean nations who sanctioned the Haiti force have higher murder rates than Haiti.
Yeah.
And so what do you can't even take care of you can't even control crime in your own country, but you're going to send troops to Haiti to try to tap down on crime. And that's what I find ironic about it. The other irony is that if you look at Garvey's vision for West Indies Federation, Haiti was at the center of that federation. But this also speaks to the prejudice in the English-speaking Caribbean countries against Haitians.
Absolutely.
And so they've been infected with the poison of European Christianity, and they say Voodoo is something as devilish. And I think it really affects the attitudes of not just the governmental people, but the general populaces in those societies.
Absolutely. Yes, brothers and sisters. We're talking to Brother Kwame Piankhi. Bon combat. Fight good, fight well, brothers and sisters. This is our New Year greeting. The fight is on. And if we were any doubt, we've been made clear, brothers and sisters, that nations in South America are being bombed. The Caribbean region is being militarized. And also, at the end of last year, Nigeria was bombed, brothers and sisters. So we're going to go on to talk about that right about now with our brother Kwame Piankhi. Before I do that, let me just hail up the people them in the chat. Big up Anthony McPhail. Big up Heru in the building. I want to hold on there. Big up my brother Seth Imhotep over there in Trinidad, dealing with the Cambole vibrations. We're preparing for Carnival in Trinidad right about now, kings and queens. Serious business on. But the Cambole reenactment in Trinidad annually is about connecting the spiritual, cultural, political and preserving the spiritual, cultural, political legacy of Carnival as resistance to Western colonialism, British colonialism in particular. And so our brother Imhotep is very much involved in that at the moment. So he'll be with us later. Big up, I think I big up Heru already. Jadorian, Dejuma Boutique is also locked on, and Lao Zhu is in the building also alongside Reparation Nation. So big up yourself. All silent viewers as well, we appreciate you and your presence. We'll get your questions in from Brother Kwame Piankhi at some point in the show. Also, my brother, let's talk about Nigeria.
Yes,
we awoke on the day of the birthday of the Loud to learn that that Trump had sent Nigeria a Christmas present. My brother.
A missile in an empty farm field. It sounds like.
Right. So
yeah, purportedly to protect Christians, right?
Right. So they've been ramping up this propaganda, and obviously this was a scapegoat, a smokescreen for in part at least, especially as far as the popular media is concerned, for Israel's what many consider to be a genocide in Gaza.
Gaza, yes.
I don't know of a time, my brother, that the United States of America has openly bombed West Africa.
Not West Africa. They did it in East Africa, Somalia.
Right.
But
right.
not openly West Africa.
Right.
I mean, if you go to the Biafran War, when which was.
But again, that was proxy. That was a proxy.
That was a proxy war. Yeah.
Right.
Granted, run by the French primarily.
Right.
But yeah, that was a proxy war. Yes.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying like this, we bombed it and so on. This is not a normal, for them to take responsibility in this kind of way is not normal. So what was your initial assessment of this bombing when you first heard about it?
Well, the bombing I found was close to the Niger border. Right. And so my initial assessment was two things. Are they trying to drive the JNM forces back into the Sahel countries to force them to fight a two-front war? Because the Sahel countries have had a lot of success in the north. And you see reports of that every day on a daily basis. So is it to force them to fight a two-front war in the south? Was it a test of the air defenses of the Sahel countries? And then, and it's also could be sending a message to Tinubu that, you are our slave and we could do what we want, because Tinubu is a highly compromised individual. I mean, there's a lot of reports in the Nigerian media about his possible connection to heroin dealing in Chicago. And so he's highly compromised. He's cut a lot of deals with France. I think France has taken control of Nigeria's tax office. The U.S. has access to Nigeria's healthcare, the ordinary Nigerian citizens' healthcare data through something that was signed, I forget, a couple months ago. So he's very much in the U.S.'s back pocket. And let's not forget, when the coup happened in Niger about 2 or 3 years ago, he was the one that was beating the war drums to invade all three countries for ECOWAS to invade all three countries. And they quickly, the three Sahel countries quickly put that down. If you listen to the journalist David Heineden, he used to be with African Stream. He's pretty much, a Nigerian journalist. The Nigerian military is so dependent on the United States that they have to ask permission to use certain weapons. So again, it's a logistical problem for Nigeria to have any sort of force in Africa. And a lot of those West African governments have purposely weakened their military because they're afraid of coups. So it shows you how ineffective the misleadership is in West Africa, because they, basically they're saying that we can't sleep at night because we don't trust our own soldiers to get us through the night, basically. So they're dependent on Western countries for security. Right.
Now, the interesting thing, my brother, is that when people are talking about, people gave various different incredible, and I mean incredible in the literal sense, as in the numbers weren't credible, of Christians who had supposedly died at the hands of Muslims in Nigeria. Some of them were ranging into the hundreds of thousands. But they were blaming particularly Boko Haram for this, and I'm highlighting this because the bombing actually took place. The bombing was in northwest Nigeria,
where Janum is. Where Janum is, yeah,
right. And Boko Haram principally operate in northeast Nigeria. So even geographically, the geography of the bombing doesn't match up with the propaganda of the bombing. So we see that something else is definitely at play here. And at Kwanzaa celebration I was hosting, Brother Kwame, and I ventured to suggest that Nigeria was bombed with the permission of the Nigerian government.
Oh yes, definitely.
And two of my Niger brothers who were in the building challenged me on this assessment. And luckily, there was a sister from Nigeria who was also there, who was able to back up exactly what I said, right? But I would like to speak to you about you touched on it already in terms of Tinubu, but because the Nigerian government officials, and I forget the name of this particular, he's a foreign secretary or something like that, who's been on the Western media quite a bit in recent months, and he was challenged correctly some of the Western propaganda around this particular conflict in terms of it being Christian versus Muslim. But then they've all told the line with the American government in terms of not condemning their actions, right? In terms of supporting them, and in terms of claiming that actually the Nigerian government provided the intelligence for the American bombing of northwestern Nigeria. So please just provide an assessment of the complicity of the Nigerian government and their cooperation with America in this regard.
Well, again, that's why I refer you back to the ECOWAS threats to invade the Sahel after the Niger coup a couple years ago. They were doing that not just only on behalf of France, but on behalf of the United States. And then under Blinken, when everything kind of fell apart, he kind of had to back off, and he distanced the United States, distanced themselves from the operation at that time, right? So yes, this is at the behest of the Nigerian government. And I also believe that, when Tinubu was recently reelected, there was a lot of allegations of voter fraud or vote fraud and vote stealing and miscounting and things of that nature. So again, they can pull the rug from underneath him anytime due to all the corruption that's associated with him. It's just amazing to me that a lot of these African misleaders are so entrenched. To me, the honorable thing is to resign. They already have stolen riches from their societies. Why don't you just resign and go off to a nice, quiet life somewhere, and let somebody else who's truly about the country's progression take its place? But it just shows you their greed, or they're in a lot of debt, or they like, going off to Europe to these conferences where they're given entertainment, every couple months. And I think they're addicted to whatever goodies they get from the Western countries, and that's what it is. So, their kids are educated in these countries, and they want their kids to have a nice. So this really, yes, it's very believable that the Nigerians provided intelligence for the strike, but again, the strikes appeared not to do any damage to anything. So what was the purpose of the strikes?
What was the purpose of the strikes?
And right. I think it was probably a test of the AES air defense.
So let's talk about that, because you did make a comparison earlier between Venezuela and the Sahel states. To the extent that you are correct about what the purpose of this was, what is your assessment of the current ability of the Sahel states to defend themselves?
That's a good question, because because the missiles hit on the Nigerian side of the border, you can't necessarily shoot them out of the sky. But was there something in their system that identified the missiles and tracked them? We don't know. That's something we don't know, right?
No, yep.
What we do know is that the week before, a Nigerian cargo plane was caught in Burkina Faso, and it was downed. And I think 11 officers were detained for at least a week, if not 2 weeks, while the Burkina Faso authorities went over to find out what the true purpose of the mission was, which wasn't to get spare parts or repairs, because the Nigerian mission claimed that they were going to Portugal for spare parts or repairs, and the Portuguese government denied it. So there's parts that we don't know and that we're not privy to. But that's my speculation. It was kind of a test case to see how if the Sahel states' air defense systems were vulnerable.
Right.
And you see see that Mali greatly increased their military budget right around the time of the attack or right before the attack, and then Ibrahim Traore gave his Black Winter speech, basically saying that war was coming and that they had to prepare for it, basically. So.
And then we see that there was apparently a coup attempt against him recently as well.
Yes.
Touch on that briefly, if you may.
Yes.
Yeah.
The confessors all confessed primarily to the coup being run from Cote d'Ivoire, but also Togo as well, because the leader of the coup attempt, Dambisa, resides in Togo, and he was the deposed Burkina Faso leader there as well. And I know those coup leaders are begging for mercy, but to me, in addition to Nigeria, the major problem in West Africa is Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast. You know, Ouattara is very much in the back pocket of the French. Remember, he was installed by the French and the United States when they arrested Gbagbo way back when. I forget how many years that is. And then and that's another one who had a fraudulent election because he did not allow the opposition to participate in the election. I think a lot of them were arrested or thrown off the voters' rolls and things of that nature. And so, but the problem childs in West Africa are Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Benin. And they're very much in France's back pocket. And you have a dying France that's desperate. They're having power outages. I think as quiet as it's kept, the Olympics being such a disaster as a result of them, the loss of uranium from Niger.
Interesting. That one I've not heard before. Okay,
but think about that power outages during the Olympics.
We'll see how that one develops. It's a lot is happening, my brother. And
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mic check.
Can you hear me?
No, sorry, your screen went blank for a second.
Oh,
yeah. I'm just making sure that we're still online, brothers and sisters. Let's give us a quality control check. Let's let us know we're still online. Let us know you can still hear us. Yeah.
Yes.
And feel free to type your questions in the chat. We may bring some of you live later on, if we have some time. But feel free to type your questions in the chat. If you would like Brother Kwame Piankhi to respond to any of them, and if you do so, if you could at Kimbunga Media, so just so I can differentiate general chit chat in the chat from questions for our guest. Thank you very much for letting us know that we're still online. Much appreciated, my brother. There's been a lot of talk about international law and the extent to which Trump is breaching international law. For people that have been politically inclined, we would know that international law has been a farce from the very beginning.
Yes.
But it is also significant when they change tact. And so there's one thing engaging in the farce of international law, but when they do away with the farce, yes, that's a significant development, right? You know what I'm saying? In terms of even the narrative, yeah? So, for example, to invade Iraq, they had to at least invent a lie about weapons of mass destruction.
Yes.
And provide a justification that had some moral foundation, right? With both of these instances, that appears not to be the case. Even in the case of Nigeria, even though they say that they're intervening to assist supposed Christians who are being genocided against, the narrative that came after the bombing didn't just played on American power, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And even worse when it comes to Venezuela, they're just doing what they want to do for the sake of preserving their own interest and their own power, and most explicitly the resources of Venezuela. So politically, whether international law was a farce or not, the political game has changed. The rhetoric has changed. And what do you make, my brother, of that change in the rhetoric as it stands at the moment? Is this significant? Is this something that we should be paying attention to? And what does it mean?
The veil is off because of the desperation of not just the United States, but the Western European countries. Nothing has worked out for them in the past 5 years, right? Mm-hmm. The Ukraine war has been a disaster, and it's basically collapsed the economies of Europe. It's also shown the weaknesses in the U.S. military supply chain because they can't build artillery fast enough because the raw materials of U.S. artillery is controlled by China, and China is now restricting it, right? And so you're seeing a very desperate Western society trying to lash out and intimidate who they can. And so they have to take the veil off. They don't have time for these big conferences and years of papers to kind of demonize other countries and come up with these moral justifications for these wars and all that sort of stuff, because they're lashing out. They're sinking pretty quickly. And as you said, a dying beast is a dangerous beast. It's a very dangerous beast. But how many of these strikes have been effective? Was the Iran strike effective? Was the Nigerian strike effective? It remains to be seen whether the Venezuelan strike was effective. Right. And so to me, right, this just speaks to absolute desperation. That's really all I can cover. Okay. Where I'm sitting right now, that's all I can speak to. Maybe a few years from now, my assessment will change. But right now, where I'm sitting, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Well, I'll be honest with you, my brother. I have actually seen the fact that the mask is now off as the actual silver lining in this whole situation.
Yes, it is.
That there should be no confusion about what is happening here. Yes, like they've made it very, very clear what the intentions are. There's no allusion to any morality, rule of law, international law, democracy, even free market capitalism. They've done away with all those justifications and said, listen, we are in it just to preserve our own interests and secure our own power to the detriment of everybody. And I think, my brother, that this is the silver lining. Again, notwithstanding all of the danger that our people are facing as a result of this dying beast lashing out, that creates a very dangerous situation. But at least we'll be clear about the intentions of the beast as they act. And I see that as one small positive aspect.
Oh, of course. It's especially for the youth on the African continent.
Yes,
because the nakedness of which this is done, and because of the dispersion of media, where it's not controlled by few sources, they can see actually the as you said, the naked aggression here. So we've gone back to 1883, right, in terms of them not having any justification. But in 1883, our people did not have the access to the media to even know about the Berlin Conference or know about how they divided up parts of West Africa or all of Africa. But now our people have knowledge about this, and you find our young people really knowledgeable about how the Bretton Woods institutions work. They especially again on the continent, they're very knowledgeable about the IMF and the World Bank, and the youth want nothing to do with those organizations. They have attracted, it's funny whether they know it or not, and I think in a lot of instances they do know it. They have really adopted the Garveyite philosophy. I mean, this is really Marcus Garvey returning. And we should say that the UNIA ancestors and all our ancestors that were killed in the Ma'afa, this is really them returning at this point with a great degree of political sophistication.
But my brother, the challenge with that is concerned. it, as much as the mask is off and the agenda is obvious, it also reveals the deep inadequacies of our governments.
Yes,
and
it
our
does.
and our level of political organization as a people at this moment in time. Yeah. So I'm saying that to say, not just on the governmental level, we are not sufficiently organized to withstand and protect ourselves against the danger of this dying beast as it stands at the moment.
No,
In
as it stands at the moment, no.
In Africa or the Caribbean.
Yeah, as it stands at the moment, I agree with you. That's why, particularly with countries who are acquiescent to the Western powers, it's very important for the populaces there to develop their own cooperative economic systems. So we can develop our own manufacturing, our own finished goods, our own clothing, our own ability to make tools of all sorts. And so I think it's very imperative that we participate in some sort of cooperative economic group. You know, whether you're in the trades, whether you are a weaver, whether you are a carpenter, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a food processor, things of that nature, because these are the foundations of nation, that sort of economy, and we have to be able to develop it wherever we are.
Brothers and sisters, stay tuned for the development of the Ujamaa Black Group Economic Show coming your way via Kimbunga Media, and the pilot will definitely be released this year, brothers and sisters, in the first half of this year. So do stay tuned, because we were having exactly those conversations in terms of how cooperative economics can be a tool in withstanding neo-colonial aggression. Brothers and sisters. All right, my brother, let us move on to Somaliland, the Somaliland issue, and I'm going to take some questions from the audience. For those who are not aware, Israel, the government of Netanyahu, recently recognized Somaliland as a nation state. Yeah. And for those who are not aware, since the 90s, there's been a campaign among a group of our Somali people to break away from the nation of Somalia and form their own nation state. So, and basically Israel has, that nation state is referred to as Somaliland, and Israel has now recognized that nation as a state. Now, this was a surprise for many people, because the people of Somaliland have been campaigning, particularly to the British government and to the American government, for recognition for quite some time. So my brother Kwame Piankhi, first of all, before I ask you what you make of the actual recognition itself, just give our viewers of an understanding of, from your understanding of the Somaliland issue, and who are the players, what are the allegiances, in Somalia, between Somalia and Somaliland, what is going on there?
Yeah, well, if you go back to the recognition of Somaliland, when Trump got elected, when they were doing analysis of his African program, a lot of his advisors, including J. Peter Pham, who created Afrikan, was saying that Somaliland needs to be recognized. Right. And so basically, and then if you look back at the history of Israel, who created Israel? The British government, as a beachhead to protect quote unquote British interest in Arabia, and also British interest in the Horn of Africa. Right. So Israel is just the tip of the spear for the Western governments, the US or Britain or the United States. And to me, Somaliland is about the Houthis. The Houthis can shut down traffic in the Red Sea at any time, and they've proven that repeatedly.
Sorry, bro. Just in case somebody doesn't know who the Houthis are, just explain who the Houthis are.
They are the rebel group within Yemen. Yemen really hasn't had a functioning government for years because of Saudi interference, and they've had basically effective civil war. But it sounds like the military might of Yemen's controlled by the Houthis, who are not part of the official government, but they govern themselves. And the Houthis have basically, anytime they're angry about what's going on in Palestine, they shut down traffic in the Red Sea shipping lanes, and there's times they fired missiles at Israel as well too. And so to me, this is about Israel and the United States trying to gain a beachhead to shut down any military advantage that the Houthis may have in that area. And of course, as you brought up in our conversation before the show, is it possible that the Israelis want to relocate Palestinians to Somaliland as well? And that's not the first time they wanted to locate either themselves or other folks in Africa, because remember, one of the initial plans for Israel was supposed to be in Uganda back in the day, but they chose Palestine instead.
Yes. So I guess my brother, because that has been this part of the speculation that one of the reasons for recognizing Somaliland is to basically because especially because a lot of the African governments have been critical of Israel in relation to Gaza. Yes. Create some fractionism to feed into factionalism between Africans and get at least one nation on side that will aid them in relocating the people of Gaza, because there is expressly from the Israeli government a relocation agenda, yes, in relation to Palestinians in Gaza. It's also worth noting, though, that for a number of years now, Israel has been trying to get a seat at the African Union.
Yep.
Yeah. And because of the fact that because of Israel's relationship to the Palestinians, specifically that issue, a lot of the African governments have been resistant to it, save for, interestingly enough, Rwanda under Paul Kagame. Yeah, that is the only government that I'm aware of.
At least publicly.
Right.
Yeah,
True.
because, as much as South Africa likes to give talk about supporting the Palestinians, they've supplied Israel a lot of weaponry still. For their operation in Gaza. So I mean, so a lot of it is talk, right? And then we also know that Netanyahu has made not references, has said that he would like to go into Nigeria to protect the Christians. Which I find kind of funny too, because if you look at what's going on in Syria, the Syrian government, which, the head of the government is ex-Al-Qaeda guy and has been accused of murdering Christians, was installed by the United States and Israel. So I just find, so again, Israel serving their purpose. They want to serve their purpose in keeping Africa colonized.
Yes.
And that's really what this is all about. But they're more naked about it now. And the excuses are very thin now, because to me, they don't have time. They don't have time. Their think tanks don't have time to put out all the fires that are going on throughout the world. In their view, the fires that are going on throughout the world in their view.
Yeah. My brothers and sisters, we are speaking to Brother Kwame Piankhi in relation to many issues that are going on in the African world. We've touched on the issues of Venezuela. We've touched on issues pertaining to the Caribbean, which are also related to the issue of Venezuela. We've touched on the issue of the US bombing of Nigeria. We've also just been talking about Israel's recognition of Somaliland in the east of Africa. The Horn of Africa is what I was looking for. Brothers. And so a lot of that, brothers and sisters, by the way, is related to tensions going back to the premiership of Siad Barre in Somalia, and some of the different political interests that cropped up since then. And I'm still studying that particular issue. But one of the things that I have learned recently is the extent to which the people who head the Somaliland project are allegiant to the British government, and players in the elite of the British scene. There seems to be a significant relationship between the Somaliland leaders and the British government. Was he going to say something there, bro?
Yeah, and then going back again, who wrote the Balfour Declaration?
Right. The British government, right?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
If you look at their papers from way back when, they said they needed a European presence in that region. So so it's not a surprise that they recognize Israel out of desperation. And then one other thing I wanted to bring up, it's also interesting that the Trump administration is deporting a lot of Somalis now. and they've turned the Somalis into the boogeyman here into the United States. So what purpose is that? Is that to put pressure on the Somali government to say, listen, you know, we want our citizens to stay in the United States because this reduces our chances of remittances and things of that nature. So it's probably a form of economic warfare to force Somalia itself to try to create some sort of deal with Somaliland. Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, brothers and sisters, I'm going to take your questions now. Bro, I'm going to share the link as well, just in case anybody wants to come on and ask you a question. It's our first show for the year, and I haven't shared the link for a while. So let's do that now. Don't wait till that hour's time, bro. Brothers and sisters, we're trying to wrap up in about half an hour at the most. Yeah. So, and we will have more conversations around this in the coming year. There's going to be more things to be said. So I'm sharing the link now. There's a few questions in the chat already, brother Kwame. So let me make sure I haven't missed any first, and then we're going to come through and ask your question for brother Kwame. Right, brothers and sisters, let's go. You know, there's a way to just get the ones that there we go. Okay. Right. So Lao Zhu 2120 is asking, Kwame, what policy should the Caribbean countries create to bring stability to Haiti, and how would they implement it?
That is a good question, and it's also a tough question, right? Because Haiti is now, I think the U.S. is using the Jamaican strategy in Haiti. The strategy that was done to destabilize Jamaica in the 1970s is being used in Haiti now. We're using the ports to import as a transshipment point for cocaine. You have a populace that has moved to the cities and become highly urbanized. And we become, you know, urban poverty is so much worse than rural poverty. And so some of Haiti's stuff is internal. The people there have to leave the big cities and return to the land so they can feed themselves, right? But strategically wise for the rest of the Caribbean has to develop an industry where they're self-sufficient, one. And two, they have to develop a military where they can actually keep their ports from being used as drug transshipment points. And it doesn't sound like a Haiti strategy. It's their own personal strategy. So these individual countries aren't so weakened by expending so much of their resources and quote unquote fighting crime and things of that nature. But beyond that, you know, to me, the strategy is more long term. You should be sending our youth over to countries that are expert in mining and refining materials and creating heavy industries, because Haiti is one of the richest one of the most resource rich countries in the world. They have rare earths, they have iridium, they have gold, they have all, and they're sitting on oil, the same oil field that Jamaica sits on, which is sweet oil, which is much easier to refine than Venezuelan oil, right? So it's important for us to have the technical knowledge to build those industries. And again, that's why I go back to the cooperative economics point that I made. We need to practice on a small scale. How do we make things? So when the time comes, and the time is coming, that we can develop these projects with a minimum of outside help, so we can use these resources for our people. I hope that answer satisfies you. It's a very long-term answer, but as the Caribbean right now is currently situated in the immediate term, there's very little the Caribbean could do to bring stability to Haiti.
Yeah, and the problem is, my brother, that unfortunately, whenever the US has moved to destabilize Haiti in one way or another, they have enjoyed the complicity of many, or the complicity or the silence of much of the governments in the Caribbean. Yeah, unfortunately, I like Haiti will never be protected unless the region itself decides to protect Haiti.
That's true.
That's just the reality. You also mentioned about Haiti being resource rich as far as the region is concerned. That is true. It's also the most populous nation in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Yeah. By the tune of millions. Yeah. 11 to 13 million people live in Haiti, and no other Caribbean nation comes close, right? And so there's a lot to be said for that population in terms of our productive capacity as a region that we are unable to invest in because the region is so divided. It's so divided economically and politically.
Mhm.
And so our labor
By design.
by design, exactly, right?
Yes.
By design, our labor is not able to be used to empower us ourselves, right? And so I wanna suggest that a part of the answer to our brother's question is that the region needs to unapologetically, and this is a difficult thing for them to do because they're so jellyback, but the region itself needs to adopt a clear anti-American imperialist policy. Right? You know what I'm saying?
But it has to be tangible. It has to be a tangible policy.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to your point in the sense of, because obviously the Caribbean is not going to fight off the big bad American military, but it can protect ports, right? You know what I'm saying? There are small things that it probably can do.
Yes.
But it's not going to do it unless there is a political unity within the region and a politics of we are not allowing America to dominate our nation's sovereignty and our nation's economy, right? It's the only way it's going to happen. Otherwise, what are we protecting our ports from, right? You know what I'm saying?
And back to protecting your ports, that means you have to deal with the elites in your whole in your own countries that transport illicit goods through those ports.
Exactly.
And so there has to be the political will to do that.
To do that. That's the only way it's going to happen. I'm sorry, bon combat. We have to fight. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We have been given no choice. Kwame Ture saying, we are revolutionary not because we love revolution, but it's because it's historically mandated. Yeah, there's no other option.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The people have bombed the people them in Venezuela and kidnapped them president and said, yeah, we didn't do it and we'll do it because we want oil and to secure America's interest in the region. That's it. There is no other way, right? It can sound, because, and I'm saying this because it can sound like you're engaging in far-fetched rhetoric when you say these things. But when you look at what the challenges are, I don't see another option. Yeah, the Caribbean needs to rally itself and understand that America is an enemy, right? We have to identify who the enemy is. Yeah, and unless it's not going to happen unless we do that. All these niceties, and it may be the case that is the agreement behind closed doors, and when they come to the forefront, it's diplomacy, and that's all well and good. At some way, shape, or form, the Caribbean needs to identify America as an enemy, yes, and protect itself in whatever way it can from America, in particular when it comes to in relation to Haiti. Because there will be any number of justifications for doing so. Go ahead.
So look at Haiti. The reason
sorry, my brother. Before you come in, a point I forgot to raise is the fact that the British media in particular, and I'm not sure what the international media has been saying, but the kidnapping of Maduro, they keep saying that there's no precedence for this. Yeah,
Gbagbo in Cote d'Ivoire. He was kidnapped.
Well, I think that was the French, though. I think that they're more saying in relation to America. Yeah.
Well, Noriega.
But they're going back to Noriega. They say the closest thing to it is Noriega. But twice since then, Aristide in Haiti has been kidnapped.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. Yes, Aristide was kidnapped. That's right.
Noriega was what, 91?
89, yeah, and Aristide was mid 90s, early 90s,
94, and then 2004.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So they keep saying that there's no precedence for this, but the point I'm making is that if, especially in relation to Haiti, the Caribbean region declared America an enemy, there would be ample justification for doing so, based upon America's documented crimes, right, in that nation specifically. Yeah, like somebody just has to stand up at some point.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like it just has to happen. Somebody just has to stand up and say, we're not having this.
Yeah, of course, but part of that has to be with tangible policies. For instance, so the reason for the mass urbanization in Haiti in recent years is because of the Clinton's rice policy that drove Haitian farmers off their land, right? So there needs to be an encouragement to buy Haitian rice that is farmed by Black small farm holders, and that should be sold throughout the Caribbean. And now you're uplifting Haiti economically, but uplifting your own distributors in your countries economically. And it forces you to build up a merchant shipping force, in the sense that we have to ship things from island to island, as opposed to using U.S. or British carriers to do the shipping for you, right? So a lot of that foundation needs to be set, and to be honest with you, it needs to be set pretty quickly too.
100%. Brothers and sisters, we have a video called Haiti and the Rice Industry that breaks down what our brother Kwame just alluded to in terms of the history of how America destroyed Haiti's rice industry. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s. So do check that out. And we also, a couple years ago, did an interview with our elder mama, Ezili Danto, a daughter of Haiti. And she actually speaks to the fact that there are small cooperative institutions that are developing among our people in Haiti in relation to agriculture. Yeah. And so there's room for us to try and find out what is going on and try to support what is going on in whatever way that we can do. Yeah, so our brother is correct. I'm speaking to the political rhetoric of the situation. Our brother Kwame is speaking to the political economic policies that need to accompany that particular positioning, that political positioning, if it's going to be viable. Yeah, so I agree. It's not enough to just declare America an enemy.
And I'll speak to this again. There's so many unemployed youth in the Caribbean, especially young men. There should be a push in each one of these countries to develop a domestic ship industry. And you don't need these huge ship liners to run between, these short distances between the islands. Basically, it's just small ships, right?
Yeah. No, one of the things that really comes to light when you're in the Caribbean is how ridiculous it is and how difficult it is to travel from one Caribbean island to the next.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's such an obvious problem that is infinitely solvable. But again, it's political will and political policy, right? The region is not politically and economically integrated enough.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? For this obvious demand to be met in any significant way. And in fact, I don't mind saying this, my brother, because I am like properly writing the Ujamaa Black Economic Show at the moment, and one of our episodes deals exactly with this issue.
Nice.
About shipping between the Caribbean islands. Yeah, so I'm with you, my brother. I feel like the message that we send to our people also needs to be like propaganda wise.
Oh yeah, also, propaganda gives you a philosophy when you're building that ship. You're doing this to uplift our people, right?
Right.
Or if you're building a drone, or if you're building a small speedboat or something like that. So the propaganda is extremely important.
Right.
But again, it has to be also simultaneously done with stuff that's tangible. Because 100%. When you look at Mia Motley, there's every day, I get, or every week or month, I get something from relatives bigging up Mia Motley for standing up. I'm like, standing up for what? And for who?
Yeah,
so it's just empty rhetoric, basically, right?
I saw a video that said that she spoke out on Trump, and I watched it. There was no speaking out in the video. Now, and even if you're gonna say, well, she has to be diplomatic, all right, cool, but don't act like this is a revolutionary speech. It just wasn't, right?
Exactly.
Right? It just wasn't. Right. Let's move on. Lao Tzu says, Shakara, when is Dr. Marimba Annie's next public appearance?
I
tell you that.
I wouldn't know. So
yeah, brothers and sisters, when Mama Marimba is ready to speak, you'll know. And you know what I'm saying, yeah. So let's be patient with that is concerned. But love to Mama Marimba Annie. I'm sure she's gonna watch this. So love to my spiritual mother. And we'll try and bring her on soon. I know that the people that are calling for her bring her on soon. Yeah. Culture education ask Senegal. This is an interesting question, my brother.
Yeah, I saw that question earlier, and I think the brother knows the answer to that question. Yes, it is.
It's,
So certain
so
because
now, okay, go ahead. Sorry, just to contextualize. Sorry, brother. Sorry, brother Kwame.
Geez, I wish I could remember his name.
Faye.
Huh?
Yeah, Faye. Usman.
Faye.
Sorry.
You know, he seems to be.
Usman
Remember,
Sonko and Faye. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he seems to be very much in the back pocket of the French, and granted, they tried to use him. The French were happy when he was elected because they tried to use him as an intermediary to the Sahel states to try to draw the Sahel states back into ECOWAS. But it now seems like Faye and Sonko are having a division within Senegal, and you know, everybody celebrates Senegal getting rid of the French bases, but Cote d'Ivoire, quote unquote, got rid of the French bases too, because the French wrote a paper saying we need to reduce our obvious presence in the region, but still maintain a presence in the region.
Right.
Because the presence was inflaming the youth in the region. So yes, Senegal is a problem. You know, and until they and you know, until they have true revolutionary leadership, they're going to be a problem still. But to me, the biggest problems are Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Benin.
Oh, absolutely. Just to contextualize this, my brother, for those who may not be aware, we've done a couple shows of this already as well. But a couple years ago, the MIF Faye was elected as the president of Senegal, and he is largely seen as the second in command of a movement led by Usman Sonko. And so they had a significant groundswell, which was significantly Pan-Africanist.
Yes, it was.
Among students in Senegal. And so the election of Faye to the premiership was seen as a significant step forward for a Pan-African agenda in Senegal in particular and West Africa in general. And since then, there's been a lot of questions about the extent to which the revolutionary rhetoric has been put into action in Senegal. For example, they were elected on a platform of la rupture, which is basically separation from the French. And so there have been a lot of questions about the extent to which that la rupture has taken place. Now, admittedly, brothers and sisters, I need to really delve back into updating myself on Senegal and what is taking place there with the government. So I will endeavor my best. I will make it my duty to do that so that we can do a show updating our people on Senegal. And possibly we'll bring you back for that show, brother Kwame Piankhi. There may be some differing perspectives on what is taking place in Senegal at the moment.
Yes.
Let's explore all of those issues.
Yeah, Senegal is not as black and white as, say, Cote d'Ivoire or Nigeria, to be honest. In terms of governments, yeah.
Right, absolutely. Right, Heru is saying, Kimbunga, the mask is off. As far as I think that's related to the American government, but they put it on again and try to convince us that it never moved. This is true, and we're so bloody gullible.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. So it'll be interesting when the next U.S. president's elected, and that president will probably be a Democrat. He'll be saying everything with a smile on his or her face, but using the same policies of Trump to see how African people will react. But if I remember, you know, towards the end of the Biden administration, at least if you saw online, a lot of the youth weren't buying the U.S.'s game anymore. And you know, because remember, I think the U.S. under Biden made some major mistakes, getting rid of African Stream. Again, they opposed the alliance of the Sahel states. They did a whole bunch of things that inflamed youth in Africa. You know, even with other policies, other social policies that they tried to implement into Africa. I think the problem is, in terms of black people, is domestically in the United States and in other European countries, black people are consistently looking for a savior. So when that Democrat comes back in office and has a smile on their face and still deporting people and things of that nature, we're just gonna take it with a smile because it's a Democrat and not a Republican who is an obvious madman.
Absolutely. All right, brothers and sisters. Bob Marley Ambush in the Night. He says, we're so ignorant that every time they can reach us through political strategy. Yeah, every time. Yeah, every time. Like every time them can reach us through political strategy. You know what I'm saying? They keep us hungry, and when you want to get some food, your brother got to be your enemy. Bob Marley, Ambush in the Night. Big tune that. All right. Lao Tzu asks, what is the state of Pan-Africanism in the Caribbean and South America? How can it be used to break the Cuban sanctions?
That I couldn't answer, to be honest with you. I don't know what the state is of Pan-Africanism. You know, you have a lot of people who talk Pan-Africanism in places like Jamaica when you visit, and it is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but is it translating into stuff that's tangible? Is it translating into something that's uplifting people economically in those regions? I'm not quite seeing that collective force in doing that. And so again, it's back to building up our technical base and doing something beyond talk. And you know, as much as I love Marcus Garvey, it's not enough to talk Garvey. You have to live Garvey.
Absolutely.
And I see too much talking of Garvey and not enough living of Garvey in the Caribbean.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree.
And then Cuba, Cuba's revolution was built in the backs of Black people, of African people. You know, the Castro used the sentiment from all those fighters who fought in the early 1900s under Antonio Maceo, and you know, and created the Cuban Revolution. Are Black people better off in Cuba than they were under Batista? Yes, but Black people are still second-class citizens in Cuba. So what are, you know, again, I don't know what the state of Pan-Africanism is in Cuba. I know when who was it, Robert Williams was left to go to Cuba after he was on the run for the United States. There's a good documentary called Negroes with Guns, and it still may be available on YouTube. So they talk about that, but the Cuban government wasn't too comfortable with his Pan-African Black nationalist rhetoric, and therefore he had to go to China after that.
A related question, bro, because Trump has said that he believes that Cuba is on the verge of collapsing. Yeah, and there are some who suggest that the attack on Venezuela was really either a precursor to an attack or an indirect attack against Cuba, because of the fact that Cuba gets a significant amount of its oil from Venezuela. Yeah.
What is possible?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what I was gonna ask, what is your assessment of the idea that the Cuban government is about to collapse?
That I don't know. They've been saying that for decades now. You know, ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, they've been saying the Cuban government's on the verge of collapse. My concern with Cuba, what are they doing to develop their natural resources? And have they really? Because again, I think, is Cuba sitting on oil too? I can't quite remember, but it may be a possibility. They're also sitting on oil, and I'm sure they have abundant natural resources within the country. But I mean, and again, I haven't visited Cuba. You know, like a lot of people of Jamaican background, I have relatives in Cuba, but I really don't know what they're doing internally to develop their resources. I did see a report that a brother who's has a travel vlog had of Cuba, and he says even now Blacks are at an economic disadvantage in Cuba compared to the lighter skinned people, because the lighter skinned people in Cuba can get remittances from Miami, where you know where you don't have as many Black Cubans in the United States to get remittances. So I really can't say what the state is.
A study does need to be done though, my brother. And the racial dynamics of Cuba notwithstanding, in terms of how Cuba has been able to withstand American intrigue, particularly since the fall of the Soviet Union, since the 1990s.
You know what I've heard? Like, for instance, Cuba has prevented mass urbanization. Like, I know years ago I read something where a bunch of people tried to come from the country into Havana, and the government removed them right back to the country because they see the Jamaican example. I hear there's a lot of farming co-ops.
Right.
In Cuba, and Cuba is very much like the leading supplier to the EU in terms of brown sugar and whatnot to go over there. So it seems like they do have cooperative farming and things of that nature. And then nobody can deny the brilliance of Cuban car mechanics. They've kept those cars from the 1950s rolling.
and their medical industry and their medical
yes, their medical industry, yes,
institution. Sorry, yeah, right. But because I'm saying that as a region in the Caribbean, it's a case study, and there are some lessons to be learned there, especially because of this increased aggression. That if we're going to stand up to that beast, then we're going to need to know how to protect ourselves. And that is a case study, definitely.
But to me, the biggest, it seems to me, and this is from reading, there's a blog called Black Brazil Today, and from reading that blog, it seems like Pan-Africanism is really growing in Brazil.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest hope for our people is in Brazil.
Okay.
In terms of maybe not in terms of Cuban sanctions, but in terms of some sort of functional Pan-Africanism. I think it being the largest population of Africans in the Western Hemisphere, Brazil is to me the one. So.
And I can confirm what our brother has said. I've had the opportunity to interact with some Pan-Africanists from Brazil, and there are significant things happening there. So another subject for another time. Big up Jadori and Chumurenga in the building. What's the proper political strategy for Pan-African nationalists to engage in when trapped behind the imperial core if one doesn't see sovereignty as a possibility in the imperial core? That's a whole... Man's asking them whole show questions. That's a whole
it is. And my simple answer is what I said before: cooperative economics.
Right.
You can, and in fact, you can have your own business and still participate in cooperative economics. Let's say, for instance, you're a chocolate maker in your country. You can gather into a buying co-op with other black chocolate makers and import chocolate, from Africa, or grow your own chocolate and import it from the Caribbean, if you're in the United States or the UK. So you can have supplier co-ops, but still maintain the autonomy of your own business. And here within the States, that's how the Arabs operate. I mean, most of the grocery stores in the where I live in the urban areas are controlled by Arabs, but they have a grocers association where they buy their stuff for groceries in bulk.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's cooperative economics.
Absolutely. I keep coming back to the Ujama Black Group Economic Show, but our brother's answers keep prompting that. And so we do have to find creative ways of operating within these systems, but the cooperative nature of it is how we are connected to our people in other institutions or related institutions and so on and so forth. And it's just extremely important, especially for us, like you said, who are in the imperial core. The real power is going to be connected to power bases outside of the imperial core.
That's right.
But we have to build those power bases, to make our activity viable. We have Lao Zhu asking, will you invite Obata Shaka on your show? Possibly. No problem with that. He has interacted with me a couple of times on Twitter. So and it's the elder that I've met a number of times. Actually, he's traveled to the UK a number of times. I
met him about 30-something years ago when I was in Chicago.
He's been coming here since I was a child. So it's Lao Tzu said, Kimbunga, be the great show. I look forward to future shows. Thank you very much. It sounds like you are a first-time viewer, my brother. Welcome, and we appreciate your feedback and your interaction. Right, I'm just making sure that I haven't missed any questions, brother. Kamal. Sorry, brother Kwame. Right. It doesn't look like I have, but I did want to touch on, because you did have some criticism of Venezuela in terms of the economic development there. And as soon as you were talking about cooperative economics, but you also juxtapose this with some of what you see as positive signs that are coming out of the Sahel in relation to the same. I'd like to end there because a lot of the questions are related to what we should be doing. And so maybe an exploration of the deficiencies within Venezuela, and there are some deficiencies there, and what you see as some of the positive signs in the Sahel may answer some of those questions in a practical sense. So let's give our viewers an answer.
Yeah, because I remember years ago when they were talking about sanctions in Venezuela, and granted, this is from the Western media perspective, but they were claiming like, access to toilet paper and things of that nature in some of the government, lack of access to toilet paper in some of the government co-ops in Venezuela.
Yep.
Don't know how true that is, but if you were to take that at face value, my whole thing was, with oil prices being the way they were throughout the 2000s, they should have been taking those profits and developing a local industry so they wouldn't be dependent on outside sources for toilet paper or soap or things of that nature. And heck, our great grandparents made their own soap, back in the day. So I don't see why that can't be developed again. But you look out the Sahel countries, they've developed tomato processing facilities, cotton processing facilities. I'm not so sure about tobacco and whatnot and stuff, but they have really stepped up, taking their raw agricultural goods and turning those into finished goods in a short period of time. And to me, that just shows that those brothers are I'm not gonna say brother, I'm gonna take it back. The leadership, because I when I look at the Sahel countries, those countries are organized on traditional African principles. You have women's councils, you have elders councils, you have all these people advising the leadership in the government. So the leadership is really taking it upon themselves to say, listen, to have a sustainable nation, we have to have a sustainable, self-sufficient economy.
Right.
And that should be the primary goal of any nation that's resource rich.
So somebody who knows a little something about Venezuela might say, but Venezuela did attempt to use its oil not just to develop itself, but to develop the region in and around the mid 2000s under Chavez.
Yeah,
with the Petro Carib. For those who are not aware, basically Venezuela was basically granting oil to Caribbean nations and other nations within the region. And I can't remember what was the full deal. Like they could pay it back when. What was?
I thought it was they would get it at a slight discount. Versus,
I'm thinking it was more than that. It
was a loan.
Yeah.
Maybe low interest loan,
or deferred payments or something like that.
It's possible. That's possible.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because basically they could delay their paying for the oil and use the profit or the money to develop or for whatever they wanted to in their nation, basically.
Yeah, I think you're correct about that. I forget about the details.
The details are slipping me, but some might say that was an attempt at doing something, but then oil prices crashed, which is probably the danger of trying to develop off the basis of a natural resources.
And my whole thing is that charity begins at home. If Venezuela developed a self-sustaining economy, then they would have had the industrial goods to help the rest of the Caribbean and the industrial expertise to help the rest of the Caribbean, more so than advantageous oil sales to those countries.
Yes. Yep. All right. But we probably need to do a whole show on the history of the Petro Carib. So we'll dedicate ourselves to doing that at some point. There is another question from Culture Education. Says he came late or she came late. Did we discuss black people in Venezuela? We did touch on black people in Venezuela.
Briefly, yes.
Yes, but we were more looking at black people in the region and how all this affects us in the region. But I do take the point that there is a need for some focus on African people in Venezuela itself specifically. There is a documentary that was done by Ahmed Caballo, founder of African Stream. So if you go on that we did share as Kimbunga Media, but his own personal channel, he recently shared a documentary that he did when he spent like 6 weeks in Venezuela in 2019. And so you can check out that documentary called Venezuela, the coup that failed. Venezuela, the coup that failed. I'm mentioning that because in it they do talk about what they call Afro-Venezuelans, and he's among the African people in Venezuela, and they discuss the conditions of African people in Venezuela as well. Yeah, so do check that out. We've been sharing that, so you can check our social media as well as our YouTube posts for that as well. Yeah, do check out that documentary. Very, very informative. Brother Kwame Piankhi, I want to thank you for joining us
Yes.
for our show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, culture education. That's Afro Native. Okay. All right. Long-standing supporter of Kimbunga Media. Big up yourself, my brother, Afro Native over there in the United States, Washington D.C., if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, give thanks, my brother, for joining us. Right. I'm gonna give you a last word, brother Kwame. What last words do you want to leave with the people then? And once again, thank you for joining us.
Well, I mean, as I said, I know a lot of people looked at the invasion or the kidnapping last week with despair, and I'm just repeating what you have said earlier. At least we see the mask off now, and we just have to prepare. We have to prepare as nations. Those of us within even imperial nations, we have to prepare because the European economies are collapsing fast. And we need to prepare lifeboats for ourselves to thrive during the collapse. And that's really what I have to say. So don't despair. We just have to work, and we also have to put positive energy out there as to our victory, because positive manifest, but negative manifest too. So we can't get into the woe is me mode either.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brother Kwame, thank you, my brother. I don't mind telling you that we're probably gonna need your services a few times. During this year, you know what I mean, to break some of these things down for us. So we appreciate you, my brother. And keep up the good work. And we look forward to your in-depth political analysis at some point again on Kimbunga Media. Thank you, my brother.
All right, thank you. All right, take care.
Yes, sir.
All right, okay, bye-bye.
Brothers and sisters, we've been listening to Shemhotep. We've been listening to Brother Kwame Piankhi, political scientist, my brothers and sisters. We need more of him in the global African community so that we can break down these issues and inform our people properly. I want to big up, why is the dome in the building? Big up my brother Rakim Shabazz. Yes, indeed, Rakim Shabazz, Debout. And so we want to encourage brothers and sisters, where is he? To subscribe to Why is the Dome. Subscribe to Why is the Dome. If you're not subscribed to Why is the Dome, our brother is having very important conversations over there. So, and also bigging up my brothers Bala and Scattered Minds is also in the building. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So big up yourselves, my brothers. Good to have the item with I. We appreciate you all. And yes, brothers and sisters, we know that it's been a while as far as Kimbunga Media live sessions. A lot of developments have been taking place behind the scenes, some of which I will inform you of in future videos. I'm going to do an update video soon. And one of the things that I wanted to do a couple years ago was host a screening. I'm going to announce this now. Host a screening of a documentary called The Forgotten Occupation, done by a child of Haiti that is looking at what America did with the occupation of Haiti in between 1914 and 1933. And he relates that to what is taking place today in Haiti. In fact, the documentary actually deals with what America was planning in terms of dealing with the so-called gangs, yes, in Haiti a couple of years ago. And so it's very, very recent. We was gonna do it then. It didn't happen for a number of different reasons, but I want to do it this year. And so March, we're gonna host that screening. So brothers and sisters, all brothers and sisters are invited. It's gonna be an online screening, so people internationally can come through, join, and we'll have a panel that we can engage with. Yeah, so I'm planning that for March. Yeah, so do stay tuned for more information on that. And as I've been saying, we're going to be in production for the pilot for the Ujamaa Black Group Economic Show in the first quarter of this year, to be edited and released shortly thereafter, so that we provide you proof of concept. So that we're going to fundraise, from which we'll fundraise for the entirety of the first season, 3/4 of which has been written as it stands at the moment. And so once, you know, we're able to viably, with good quality control, produce it, then we'll produce it this year and release it once it is at a standard to be received by the masses of our people. And so we want to thank you. It's been a while, like I said, but we want to thank you for sticking with us and trusting in us and continuing to support us, brothers and sisters, whether that be morally, you know, whether that be financially, whether that be through likes, whether that be through shares, whether that be through your viewing eyes and your listening ears. We appreciate you all for continuing to stay with Kimbunga Media, and we'll have different forms of content, some interviews, some footage from recent events in the community over here in the UK. We'll be sharing in the coming weeks as well. Got a video coming, which is an analysis of a conversation that I recently had. So yeah, do stay tuned for that one too, brothers and sisters. All right, and with that we say Bon Komba, Bon Komba. Our New Year greeting is not Happy New Year, it's Bon Komba, which means fight good, fight well, fight strong, fight hard. May your fight go and be well, brothers and sisters, because in this day, age, dispensation of time, the fighting spirit, the African fighting spirit, is definitely needed, required, and essential. Tendai Mwale, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai, Mudzimo, Mokolo. We give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tummi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Bon Komba.
Black people, we have to fight. Egungu, you see us. Ogu, we have to fight. Let's go fight.